In this video, we're going to talk about the reading connection. And what the reading connection is, it includes 8 steps. And it's basically the start to finish of how to read a story to children and being prepared and trying to get into those 3 levels of questions that were in the video above. So have your handout ready for you. Looks like this. You can see it's backwards, I know. As I'm going through each step. And if you need to, feel free to take notes. Again, I'm kind of just basically going over the handout itself. So step 1 is you always want to read the book beforehand. You want to make sure it's appropriate. I know that there's been a time where I've had students in here, whether it's a volunteer or practicum students in the past, and they've picked up a book and it maybe was one that it wasn't on the shelf, but they had brought in a book and there was words in there that maybe weren't necessarily appropriate. And when I say that, it's words like dumb, stupid, those kind of words that we want to try to avoid. So by reading a book ahead of time, you kind of already know that stuff. Or for example, every January we talk about Martin Luther King Jr. And I have a really great book about Martin Luther King Jr.'s life. However, there's certain parts in there that I skip because I know ahead of time, and we don't talk about with my kindergarten class that he was assassinated. So I know to skip those kind of books, and I know that book doesn't go out on the shelf. So have that in mind, that step 1 is you should always be reading the book before sharing it with children. Step 2 is you're going to identify up to 3 words in the story that you think the children may not know the meaning of. So you're going to be looking for 3 different vocabulary words. And then decide how you're going to explain or describe those words to children at their level. So if there's a word gigantic, toddlers or preschoolers may not know what the word gigantic means. Or I read a book the other day to my class that was called Harvest Party. And that was one of the first questions that I asked is, what does harvest mean? So looking for those up to 3 words that children maybe don't know. So again, this is when you're reading the book ahead of time that it really helps you with those vocabulary words. So step 3, so step 1, read the book ahead of time. Step 2, look for up to 3 basically vocabulary words that you're going to share with children and try to get into those meanings. Step 3 is you're going to write questions for surveying the cover of the book. And the survey is when you're looking at the cover and the pictures in the title and asking children the 3 different levels of questions. So, what we had gone over in the video, but the literal, interpretive, and applied, and trying to come up with those questions based off of just the cover of the story. So step 1, read the book. Step 2, identifying up to 3 vocabulary words, and you're going to have those ready. Step 3 is writing questions, so you should have 3, because the 3 levels of questions, about the cover of the book and the title, and looking at what the title on the cover tells us about the story. Step 4 is you're going to identify a main purpose for reading the story, and you're going to tell the children. So maybe you're reading the story to learn about apples. We were just going over apples and the life cycle of apples and parts of apples and all of that fun fall stuff. So maybe that's the reason why you're reading. Or maybe you want them to be listening or looking for things as you read. So that's important to keep in mind. And tell them that. So it gives more meaning to the story instead of just saying, today we're going to read The Mitten by Jan Brett. It's really looking at telling the children why. What is the purpose behind the story? What is the purpose behind taking this 15-20 minutes of sitting down and reading this story together? You're actually going to write it down. So with all of these steps, you actually write them down. Step 5 is you're going to actually read the story again, and you're going to come up with 3 questions following those 3 levels of questions about the story itself. So in step 3, you wrote questions about the cover and the title. Now in step 5, you're writing questions about the book. And you want to make sure that you touch upon all 3. Do you have a literal question? Do you have an interpretive question? Do you have an applied question? And you should have at least 1 for each of those. And I say at least because most of the time you're going to have way more, but at least 3. 1 for each. Step 6 is now you're going to carry it out. You're going to get the children together, you're going to read the story, you're going to go over the survey of the cover, you're going to share vocabulary words, and you're going to share the purpose of reading. Step 7 is you move forward, you read the story. And as you're reading, you're going to carry out step 8, which is asking the questions that you had come up with. So basically, this is the reading connection is looking more at really understanding the book, what children are getting out of it, why you're reading it, and making it more meaningful for them and making that text-to-self connection. And it really just breaks it down into the 8 steps. And as you start to do this process more, as you start to do the reading connection, it really just becomes secondhand to you and you don't even realize that you're doing it. So, when you're picking up a story and you're saying, the mitten, and you're looking at the cover, and it could even be, what do you think the story is about? Or what season do you think this story takes place in? What makes you think that? What tells you that? And it just becomes secondhand that you're kind of doing it and that you're applying the reading connection. So we're going to be putting this to use this week. So if you have any questions about each of the steps, again, that's on the handout, but if you have any questions, let me know.